Marcus, I'll let you introduce yourself for the three people in the audience who perhaps haven't met you before. But Marcus also, I mean, we've got a whole room here of the smartest people in the industry, but Marcus has been around. He has seen a lot in the industry, and if you don't mind, Marcus, I'm going to take some of the time today during our chat to pick your brains about what you're seeing, almost COVID aside, but what you've been seeing, working with various programs, and where you see maybe those developments going forward. But did you just maybe want to take a moment to briefly introduce yourself?
Sure, I can do that. As I said before, my name is Marcus Puffer. It's on my badge somewhere here. I'm working for IBS Software now. And I've been in that aviation industry for most of my life in various roles. Worked in various airlines. I worked in the Starlines organization for a long time before I took responsibility for the loyalty program at an airline that some of you may still know, not there anymore, Berlin. Managed the bonus program, then decided to change to the other side of the table and join the provider side and learn more about technology and what technology can do to that what we love, running, operating loyalty programs for your members.
When you think about it, when you consider the program management side, when you consider the provider side, the common thread there, and I mean, we really heard it from this morning's panel, is, and even from the introductory remarks, it's about the customer, right? It's about the member. I mean, without the customers, without the members, we could have fancy programs, fancy brands, but we're not really, as loyalty, delivering to our parent company if we're not actually delivering a behavioral change. That behavioral change might be retention, it might be, switching costs, share of wallet, or ideally some incremental spend behavior of some description. Traditionally, heads in beds, bums on seats, but, as we move forward, we're seeing, whether it might be increased commercial activity through partner earn, for example. So, we had some comments, already today, and Ben certainly alluded to even like the American Advantage changes. We don't want to talk about that too much because obviously it's a different geography, but, it's a good, perhaps portent. Especially, it's interesting because the US has really struggled with having that, and I don't like to use the coalition word, but that spread of everyday earn partners. But other geographies around the world, whether it's the UK, or it's Canada, Australia, Asia Pacific, those geographies and market segments embraced everyday earn and burn a long time ago. The US has really struggled with that, so it's interesting. It's a different driver that might be pushing them in that direction, but it's interesting to see that. But from the panel this morning, some interesting thoughts that came out. I want to sort of pick your brain on it. Ben sort of mentioned, about the dynamic pricing, things like that. Before COVID, there was a lot of talk about that. There was my off-the-cuff comment about copying the US airlines. I mean, they're going revenue-based, and what I mean by that, by having overt minimum dollar spend requirements to earn elite status, as opposed to who's a British Airways person? Avios. Yeah, so your tier points, right? I mean, it's revenue based, right? The more you spend, the higher cabin you fly, and generally speaking, the more expensive fare you purchase. Generally speaking, you earn more tier points towards your status. But you're not reminded every day exactly how many dollars you've spent over the course of the year, right? So your spouse or your boss isn't necessarily seeing, oh my God, you spent $20,000 this year on travel. You earned 1,000 tier points. Okay, all right, you earned 1,000 tier points. Don't really know what that means. And Marcus, I remember 2 years ago, right before the pandemic, you and I were talking about this very thing, whether strategically there might be an error in overtly reminding people how much they're spending, but also outpricing our top tier status so that the only people who would actually reach the lofty qualification levels are the ones who already are reaching the lofty qualification levels without the incentive of the loyalty program. Therefore, is it wasted marketing spend? And are we ignoring a huge opportunity cost of the 85% of the membership pool that aren't spending at that level, but in aggregate are responsible for the lion's share of the commercial revenue? I remember we had that discussion, I think it was in Florida. It would have been nice to be able to have this discussion now to say, well, which direction that go, but this sort of hiccup happened in the way. We can't really look back at the data. But we also heard about data this morning, and in terms of loyalty being smarter about leveraging that customer data and using it to reach the more, I'm going to call them everyday members that might not be our managed corporate travelers at the highest elite status. We heard about points expiry, and even right at the end, I think there was I brought up the issue of the operational concerns about delivery, especially in a hotel franchised environment. But what about central management? If we're loyalty managers sitting in the corporate office, there are some things we can do that we can take out of the hands of the minimum wage front desk person that's been there for 2 weeks at a franchise property, with an owner that also owns 5 other hotels, all of which are with different competitors. They don't really care about us. Let's just be honest about it. These are the challenges we face as a loyalty manager. Data and central management, Hilton just announced, I think it was US only, Heather, you might be able to correct me, central management upgrades just got deployed. Is that just US only for now? It's global. There we go. It was just last week, wasn't it? The week before or something. That's a fantastic thing. We're taking it out of the hands of the front desk, who may be inconsistent delivery, and being able to deliver both the communication touch point and hopefully the benefit delivery execution centrally. So hopefully we have better outcomes in that regard. Where you sit, formerly as a program manager and now on the tech side, how do you see all of those challenges coming together, and how can we solve them, and where do you see it going?
A lot of themes, right? To get them in order. But you mentioned data, right, as an essential point. I think I like the silence that happened in the panel before when the question was asked about artificial intelligence and data, and I was like, yeah, we all talk about it, we would like to do it, but data is key. Where do we get it? Is it clean? Do we have that amount of information? And years back, we were talking about big data, right? Which I think meant more, can you collect a lot of data? And I think technologically, that's not a problem. Technology is there. The question is, what do you do with that? And how do you transform the insights that you create through means of artificial intelligence, machine learning, if you have those capabilities, in such a form to the front line, to those where the real customer experience is happening, either through a person or through the channel, right? Where it is important to condense that into something that is digestible, right? The agent at the front of in the front desk in the hotel, the flight attendant in the flight, they don't want to go through a customer profile with a history that takes 2-3 years of experiences, right? They need a curated piece of information, ideally, and in order to come to that point, I think only artificial intelligence and machine learning will be the means of the future to really bring that in that condensed form to the forefront. And actually, one of the previous conferences, Dr. Najib Benkeda from Emirates made a presentation, and also I think on Paula Thomas's podcast, he mentioned that the intention of getting that personalized offer as and when customers are really, interacting with the brand is important, right? And the importance you mentioned of these impact offers during the booking flow, and that Emirates puts on that. And I think James is here in the audience, so he can comment on that later. I found it quite fascinating. But the key towards that is, how do you get that information curated in such a form that the front end, the customer or the channel, the one who delivers the promise, really can use that. And I think that is one part of the future that as system providers we have to work on, right? But that comes the next challenge, that in every organization that we work with, you're not just doing that for yourself, right? You have to do that in the larger scale of an ecosystem, which is certainly the biggest challenge for most of you, I would assume. How do you get into an ecosystem that has 100 other systems around it, right? In the hospitality space, we talked about that. I don't know if it was Isabel or Heather, you have all of these different property management systems. So how do you get that established, that a consistent delivery of those benefits is really being delivered to the customers?
It's an interesting challenge. We have a panel coming up, I think, after the morning break to talk about big data, and I think that this is a really good segue question to kind of kick that off. It's a huge challenge. We've been talking about this for years, right? But in terms of the operationalization, the execution of it, what does it actually mean at the front desk? One thing I think Marriott, for example, has been well recognized globally for years, even before the merger with Bonvoy, was, some people might have critiqued that the elite benefits used to be very weak with Marriott, but what was consistent was the PMS at the front desk would accurately prompt the check-in agent, even if it's their first day, Mr. Puffer, welcome back. Thank you for being a gold member. Little things like that we take for granted, but if the frontline people don't have that information.
Yeah, but I think here you're touching a point, right? We don't have a sponsor list. I'm an IHG member, and I stay quite a lot of IHG properties, so sorry for Accor, Hilton, Marriott at this point in time. And I get this message there as well, right? I get the same message at every hotel.
Even when it's your first time?
Even if it's my first, well, they don't say welcome back, but they welcome me as an elite or status member, right? Which is nice. But if you stay at a fifth hotel, you get the exact same message, right? It gets monotonous and mechanic in a way.
Sure.
So the question is, how can you enrich that message about that, welcome back, you've been with us, welcome back after, 2 months, how was your last stay in
Congratulations, it's your 75th stay at the Holiday Express.
Something like that. So how do you get that personalized element into the level of personalization that you already have achieved? I think that will be some of the next steps where you then also, coming back to the last panel, can overcome, right? The challenges in times like that where maybe the buffet is not open and certain benefits are not there. But again, you can overcome. We're all in the same situation. You can overcome that with that human touch.
Mark Nasser from Air Canada. I know a lot of people watched the episode because we were talking about it earlier. But last year, I have to think what year it was. Last year, early in the pandemic, when Air Canada was getting ready to launch the new program, we had them on the guys on the webcast. And Mark famously made the comment that IT is where most good loyalty ideas go to die. Now that you're on the other side as a technology service provider, it's a real challenge. We all, as program managers, we have the challenge with IT, with getting initiatives done, getting them approved. It's really just, even if everyone loves the idea, getting the resource time to be able to implement them. Now that you're on the other side as a technology provider, what are you seeing? And you can keep the clients anonymous if you're not allowed to name them. But are you seeing any interesting developments, projects, implementations that you think are noteworthy for loyalty managers to be thinking about going forward?
Well, you pick on Mark. I think he said that before they launch. I hope he would not say that after they launch. It's no secret that we're providing the platform to them, and I think lots of the innovations that they have brought up as part of the relaunch and as part of the ongoing process of building. That's okay. That's okay. It has to be clean.
I'm so sorry to hear you.
Applause. She needs to do her job.
We are very messy. There's no secret about that.
So coming back. So lots of the innovations that they brought out, as well as some of the things that they were launching as part of the reaction to the crisis, right? We were able, I think, to very quickly enable through technology, right? I think just yesterday they launched the partnership with the Liquid Control Board of Ontario, where you can argue, sponsoring or incentivizing drinking alcohol in the pandemic may be a good or bad thing to come through that. But more noteworthy, some innovative partnerships to exactly attract a broader customer base, the non-frequent traveler customer base in the time with like the partnership they did with Starbucks, right? Which is not just an earn and burn partnership, but really an account linking, if you like. those innovations, innovations on the tier benefits, on the granting of benefits, I think technology can enable you to do that, right? What we observe, fortunately for us, because that's our business, is that there is a trend towards moving away from the legacy that prevents you from doing that, going to this new latest gen technology which enables you to do that and bring it out faster. Because I think that is the problem or the theme of the day, that the market segments, the market demand, the needs have changed rapidly. We talked about that, right? You know, you're not talking about the frequent flyers at the moment. You're actually talking about how can I engage long tail, because these guys are